Welcome to the fourth episode of DriveTime. In this series, Walt and I continue our conversation surrounding how to navigate the pitfalls of pornography. DriveTime is a tool for you as a parent or a grandparent to get equipped on the go so you can better engage the world your son, daughter, grandson, or granddaughter inhabits. Listen to DriveTime in your car before or after work, in between drop-off or pickup, or even at home. Now, you might have kids in your car while listening. That's great. But please be aware that some topics we discuss, especially in this series, might not be appropriate for kids 10 and under. In this episode, we'll look at the lies the church communicates about porn. The culture is full of many lies when it comes to pornography, but sadly, so too is the church. And not because of anything they do on purpose. It's with good intent, but a lack of knowledge or willingness that the church can sometimes communicate something that it doesn't plan or hope to share. How we speak about, engage, and tackle this issue communicates what we believe about not just pornography, but all of sex and sexuality. That is why it's important for us to discuss the issues surrounding pornography with honesty, both in our homes and in our church. Please be aware, even though I am speaking about the church, I recognize it's dangerous to say this is true for every church. It's not. These are simply some of the lies that have taken place in some churches and have in some way made its way into our larger lexicon of beliefs surrounding this subject. The majority of churches are doing great work around the issue of pornography.
Correct, Jason. We need to be vigilant when it comes to any lie that either the culture or the church shares. Pointing back to the creation story and God's ultimate plan as the sex maker must always be our goal.
The first lie that can be communicated is that everyone who looks at porn is addicted. However, this is simply not true. Not everyone who watches pornography will become immediately enslaved. Sometimes we hear from parents who worry their children will become an addict after being exposed only a few times. Too often, as fear and shame enters the parent-child relationship, it can make the problem worse by creating distance and isolation and complicating feelings that already exist. While we are looking at how to navigate the pitfalls of pornography, we have to also maintain that those who fall into porn are not bad people, and not all people who are exposed to pornography become addicted. The desire to watch porn arises in part from simply being a sexual human being. That science and research is showing the harms of viewing pornography, but that doesn't mean it's going to automatically ruin their lives and turn every person who watches it into a hopeless porn junkie. I sometimes wonder if we as Christian leaders interchange the words habit and addiction without meaning so. Regardless, understanding the difference between habit and addiction, it's extremely important, especially as it relates to how one engages pornography. One noticeable difference between habit and addiction is the amount of effort and time required to change the behavior. Altering habits requires minimal effort, time, and attention. On the other hand, addiction often demands an integrative, long-term plan to treat negative physical, social, and spiritual symptoms like withdrawal, as well as the emotional disconnect between body and behavior. As a human being, you are naturally drawn to habitual behaviors because repetition creates familiarity and comfort. Positive habits can even become tools of survival. Sometimes, however, habitual behaviors take a dark turn and develop into addictions. Recovery requires that you honestly assess your behavior and how it is affecting your health, relationships, jobs, spirituality, and life to understand the difference between habit and addiction. Someone who habitually watches porn is dramatically different than someone who is addicted to porn.
When trying to assess your son or daughter's pornography use, it can help to hear some of the warning signs of porn addiction. These include being consumed with thoughts of porn even when they are not actively viewing it. Viewing porn on a smartphone, iPad, or an iPod during school, work, or in social situations where you might be seen. Feeling ashamed, guilty, or depressed about their porn viewing. Continuing to watch porn despite any harm it has had, is having, or may have on their relationships, school, work, or home life. Early onset of sexual activity. Getting upset when asked to stop using porn. Losing track of time when viewing porn. And trying and failing to quit. Obviously, you will only know this if you're talking to your kids. In case you skipped episode 2 or 3, be sure to go back and listen to our thoughts on engaging in this conversation with your children. If you thought you observed more than 3 or 4 of these warning signs in your son or daughter, it would be good to seek professional help. Most times, however, What we observe in church could be described as a habit, which requires the breaking of a custom or norm.
The second lie is one that can be assumed because of the church's silence. Those individuals who view pornography can easily think they are the only ones who struggle. Silence, unfortunately, is something the church can do quite well. As the numbers of those who struggle with pornography increase, along with an ever-growing number of individuals who experience other forms of sexual brokenness, it is staggering that the church as a whole doesn't engage the issues surrounding sex and sexuality more often. I believe there are a variety of issues surrounding this silence. I think it's our own past, our own sexual baggage that keeps us silent. I think it's how dealing with sexual brokenness in our own life and in the lives of others can be messy. I think it's because we don't have a full or complete understanding of God's grand design as the sex maker. Or maybe it's because we simply just want to pretend everything is okay. Think about what this silence breeds. It can make people believe that their struggle is unique and that no one else has this same issue. This can make them retreat and grow in their own shame. And remember, shame communicates I am a mistake, whereas guilt communicates I made a mistake. Those are dramatically different from one another. So this silence can make people believe they are not valuable.
Adolescence is a period of life spent at the crossroads. It's a time marked by overwhelming change, numerous questions, and a search for answers. But the crossroads where they stand are anything but quiet and desolate. Not sure which direction to take, our children and teens are presented with an abundance of confusing options. The noise can be deafening. Perhaps the signposts they choose to follow are the ones that are most attractive, loud, and convincing in response to their unspoken teenage cry of "show me the way." This is why we need to be absolutely clear when we talk to our kids about sex and sexuality. This includes our conversations surrounding pornography. Silence should never be an option.
Very true, Walt. I am struck at how important these crossroads are and the need to be sure we are sharing God's truth, not confusing His truth with something that is nothing close to His plans. There is a reason our kids are drawn to the naked human body. They were created to desire this. But there is a plan and a place that He has prepared for us to experience this desire in the covenantal marriage relationship, and we should be speaking of this at every intersection along the way. In an effort to jumpstart dialogue that will help you engage your son and daughter, we've come up with questions, thoughts, and activities to help you promote an environment that fosters healthy discussions surrounding sexual integrity. For this episode, we've decided to not segment questions and activities by age, but rather take a moment to examine how not to use shame as a deterrent. Helping our kids understand that they are a good kid who might have made a bad choice is better than them being seen simply as a bad kid. Shame is most likely already a part of the equation, so learning how to label the behavior and not the child is important.
Doing a wonderful job of differentiating shaming language from helpful, heart-changing language will be important. For example, instead of saying, "I can't believe you did this," consider saying, "I'm sorry you were faced with this. What are some of the consequences of your decision?" Or instead of saying, "I'm so disappointed in you. Only bad kids get into stuff like this," consider saying, "Help me understand. How did you feel when you decided to do this? How did you feel afterwards? Was God anywhere to be found in all of this?" Kids who feel loved and accepted are kids who can make different choices next time.
So true. Our language, what we say, how we say it, even where we say it, can speak volumes to our children. Finding ways to communicate this love is our duty. Sometimes our language can come from an assumption. When we are in a panic, our imaginations might run wild. We can easily believe the worst about how our child was exposed to porn, why they looked at it, and all the other things they may be trying to hide. But when we follow fears rather than facts, it changes our language and how we communicate with our children. Talking lovingly and calmly with your kids can sometimes be difficult when porn is a part of the story. But it is possible if we stop, choose not to assume, and use language that goes after the heart and communicates God's design for sex. Both Walt and I wanted to be sure you have other resources This is why we included links to handouts with questions, activities just shared, along with scripture we noted in this episode to help further your conversations beyond this episode of DriveTime. Simply go to www.drivetimepodcast.org and look for DriveTime Series 2, Episode 4 for tools related to this episode, or take a look in your episode notes. DriveTime couldn't exist without the support of our sponsors. I'm happy to say this series is brought to you by Simply Blessed, Finding Joy in the Little Things, a 31-day devotional that will remind you of the true character of God. I asked its author, Kim Chaffin, to share one of her favorite stories from the book.
I think one of my very favorite stories would be Clean Out the Cushions. It's a true story about sitting on my pastor's couch with my daughter and our exchange student. And our exchange student was saying how comfortable the couch was. As she ran her hands under the cushion, a steak knife came out of the couch cushions, which was a shock to my pastor and his wife. I knew that God talks to me through the oddest, most mundane things. And I went home that night and I'm like, what are you trying to tell me, God? And he said to me, we stuff down the hurts in our heart, down in the bottom of our hearts so we don't have to deal with it. And when we do that, it's like that knife in the couch cushions. And if we don't deal with it, it can be potentially harmful to us and to other people that maybe we unload that pain on that they didn't know it was there. And so I wrote that chapter around that knife, but I also looked at it from David's point of view when he prayed, "Create in me a clean heart, O Lord." And that was a prayer that David was literally cleaning out his heart to God, and that's what we need to do. So it's those simple stories that happen in my life that are often humorous at times that I bring around to a very practical, biblical lesson. And when you're done with that day, I actually ask you to go clean out the cushions of your couch. So there's always a fun activity to do too.
You can find Simply Blessed, Finding Joy in the Little Things, a 31-day devotional, on Amazon. Get your book today. DriveTime is a resource from Project 619. If you found what we've shared to be helpful, will you take a moment and give us a favorable rating on iTunes? This helps DriveTime be found by others. Until our next episode, we wish you only the best as you use your DriveTime to start conversations that bring glory to God in your home, around the dinner table, or wherever the life-changing messages that center on Jesus Christ are shared.